The void of space stretched endlessly before Kalen, stars glittering like scattered diamonds against the darkness. His hands moved with practiced precision across the control panel of his transport vessel, the Asteria. The ship was small but reliable, perfect for solo missions like this one, transporting rare medicinal minerals from the outer colonies back to the central planets. Just another routine run, he muttered to himself, checking the secure containment unit where his precious cargo was stored. The crystalline compounds were worth more than the ship itself, harvested from the volcanic moons of Cygnus 4 and desperately needed for vaccine production in the central systems. Kalen was known throughout the Interstellar Transport Guild for his caution. Some called him paranoid, but he preferred the term prepared. 20 years of flying through uncharted sectors had taught him that space was unforgiving of mistakes. His meticulous nature had saved his life more times than he could count. A sudden alarm blared through the cockpit, jerking Kalen from his thoughts. Red warning lights flashed across his monitors. "What the?" he began, fingers flying over the diagnostics panel. The readings made no sense. A massive energy surge was building in a nearby nebula, something his sensors should have detected long before now. The first wave hit the Asteria like a physical blow. Kalen was thrown against his restraints as the ship lurched violently. The second wave was worse. Crackling energy coursed through the ship's systems, overloading circuits and shutting down vital functions. "Mayday, mayday!" Transport vessel Asteria requesting emergency assistance. Kalen called into the comm system, but only static answered him. The energy storm was interfering with all communications. The navigation system flickered and died. Life support switched to emergency power. The Asteria tumbled helplessly through space, caught in gravitational currents Kalen couldn't counter with his failing thrusters. Through the viewport, he spotted a planet, large, blue-green, and dangerously close. The Asteria's damaged systems identified it as Xylos, an unexplored world with a breathable atmosphere, but classified as a high-risk environment due to its aggressive ecosystem. Better than dying in space, Kalen muttered grimly, redirecting what little power remained to the landing systems. If he could just control their descent enough to avoid burning up in the atmosphere. The entry was brutal. Heat shields strained to their limits as the Asteria blazed through the upper atmosphere like a meteor. Kalen fought with the manual controls, sweat pouring down his face, muscles straining against the crushing G-forces. Trees, massive, alien trees, rushed up to meet him as the ship plummeted toward the planet's surface. The impact came in a series of shattering crashes. Metal screamed as the Asteria careened through the dense forest canopy, shedding parts of its hull like a wounded animal. A final bone-jarring slam threw Kalen against the control panel before emergency restraints deployed, saving him from being crushed. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of ruptured cooling systems and the ping of hot metal contracting. Kalen hung limply in his restraints, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. His ribs ached fiercely, possibly cracked. The emergency lights bathed the ruined cockpit in an eerie red glow. Survival training kicked in. After checking himself for serious injuries and finding none that would immediately kill him, Kalen released his restraints and stumbled through the wreckage of his ship. The cargo hold was mostly intact, but the communication array was beyond repair. His emergency beacon might still work, but it would take days, possibly weeks, for any rescue to reach him, if anyone detected the signal at all this far from established routes. Gathering what supplies he could salvage, a portable medical kit, water purifier, multi-tool, and emergency rations, Kalen prepared to venture outside. The ship's atmospheric analysis confirmed the air was breathable, but warned of high spore concentrations and unknown biological elements. Kalen paused at the damaged airlock, taking a deep breath before stepping on alien soil for the first time in his life. Xylos was a world of overwhelming sensory input. The forest towered hundreds of meters overhead, primeval giants with trunks wider than Kalen's ship. The undergrowth pulsed with bioluminescence, blues, purples, and greens that painted the shadows with ghostly light. The air was thick with humidity and alive with sounds. Rustling leaves, distant cries of unseen creatures, and an omnipresent humming that seemed to vibrate from the ground itself. Focus, Kalen, he reminded himself. Water, shelter, safety. In that order. He set off in search of a water source, keeping the crashed Asteria in sight for as long as possible. His training told him to stay with the ship, but instinct warned him the crash would attract attention. And on a world like Xylo's, that attention was unlikely to be friendly. The first hints that he was being watched came subtly, a stillness falling over the forest as he passed, the sensation of eyes tracking his movement. Kalen kept his hand on the small pulse pistol at his hip, though he doubted its effectiveness against whatever apex predators ruled this world. He found a small stream with clear, running water that his purifier deemed safe for consumption. As he knelt to fill his container, a reflection in the water caught his eye, something moving in the canopy above. Kalen froze, then slowly raised his gaze. Nothing was there. He resumed, filling his container, senses on high alert. The feeling of being stalked intensified with each passing moment. As he straightened and turned to head back to the ship, a blur of movement was his only warning before something powerful slammed into him from behind. Kalen hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. A weight pinned him down, and he felt the sharp point of a weapon press against the back of his neck. He didn't struggle, knowing it would only drive the point deeper. A low, rumbling growl sounded directly above him, more felt than heard. Slowly, Kalen turned his head just enough to glimpse his attacker. His first impression was of emerald fur and amber eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. His attacker was bipedal, but definitely not human. Powerful muscles shifted beneath a coat of short, jade-green fur. The face was feline, with prominent canines and a black nose, framed by what looked like ritual scarring or tattoos around the eyes. Those eyes studied him with predatory intelligence and unmistakable hostility. The creature, no, Kalen corrected himself. The person was female, her body a powerful blend of humanoid and feline features. She wore minimal clothing made from woven plant fibers and what looked like tanned leather, adorned with bones, teeth, and colorful feathers. The weapon pressed to his neck was a spear crafted from a polished bone shaft tipped with a wicked point of what appeared to be volcanic glass. She growled again, pressing the spear more firmly against his skin, and made a series of gestures with her free hand. Kalen recognized it as an attempt at communication, but he had no reference for the meaning. "I mean no harm," he said slowly, keeping his voice calm and even. "My ship crashed. I'm just trying to survive." The feline warrior tilted her head, clearly not understanding his words, but studying his tone and body language. She prodded him with the spear, then made a motion that clearly meant get up slowly. Kalen complied, careful to make no sudden movements. Standing, he could see she was slightly shorter than him, but far more powerfully built. Her eyes never left his, tracking every micro-expression with predatory focus. She circled him warily, spear always pointed at his vital organs, occasionally sniffing the air. She seemed confused by his scent, his clothing, his very presence. After completing her circuit, she jabbed the spear toward the direction of his crashed ship and made a questioning sound. "Yes, that's my ship," Kalen said, nodding and pointing in the same direction. "It's damaged. I can't leave." The warrior's eyes narrowed. She gestured at him, then at the forest around them, then made a slashing motion across her throat. The message was clear enough. You don't belong here, and that makes you dangerous. Kalen needed to prove himself non-threatening, and quickly. Slowly, telegraphing his movements, he reached for his multi-tool. The warrior tensed, but Kalen held up his other hand in a placating gesture. "Just showing you something," he said soothingly. He activated the tool, which emitted a small beam of focused energy. The warrior jumped back, spear raised defensively. Kalen quickly knelt and used the beam to start a small, controlled fire with nearby kindling. The fire caught, and Kalen stepped back, looking up at the warrior. Her expression had shifted from outright hostility to cautious curiosity. She stared at the fire, then at the tool in his hand, clearly assessing the technology. Kalen took a risk. He held the multi-tool out to her, handle first. "It's just a tool," he said, "not a weapon." She hesitated, then quickly snatched it from his hand, examining it while keeping her spear trained on him. After figuring out the activation mechanism, she tested the beam on a leaf, watching it burn with fascination. After a moment, she tossed the tool back to him and made a gesture toward the stream, then into the forest. Keeping her spear pointed his way, she began walking, looking back once with an expression that clearly meant follow or die. Kalen followed, keeping a respectful distance. They traveled deeper into the forest, the warrior moving with silent grace while Kalen stumbled over roots and vines. Occasionally she would halt, suddenly listening, then change their course slightly. Twice she froze completely, pulling Kalen into cover as something large moved through the forest nearby, something that made the ground tremble with each step. They reached another stream, larger than the first, with clear, fast-moving water. The warrior pointed to it, then mimicked drinking. Kalen nodded in understanding and used his water purifier to fill his container. He offered her some of the purified water, but she declined with a snort, instead drinking directly from a stream. As daylight began to fade, the forest's bioluminescence intensified. Floating organisms that resembled jellyfish drifted through the air, trailing tendrils of soft blue light. Plants unfurled glowing petals, and fungi along the tree trunks pulsed with rhythmic patterns of light. It was beautiful, but Kalen wasn't fooled. Beauty on Xylos meant danger. He'd already spotted several smaller creatures that had ventured too close to certain plants only to be swiftly ensnared and consumed. The warrior led him to a small clearing where a massive tree had fallen, creating a natural shelter. She gestured for him to sit, then tossed him some kind of fruit, purple with a tough outer skin. She demonstrated peeling it before eating her own, revealing juicy, golden flesh inside. Kalen hesitantly tried it after his purifier indicated it was non-toxic. The taste was surprisingly pleasant, sweet with a tangy afterbite, like mango mixed with citrus. As they ate in silence, Kalen studied his captor, or guide, more carefully. Despite her fearsome appearance, he noticed a certain grace to her movements, a thoughtfulness behind those amber eyes. She wasn't simply a savage predator. There was culture in her adornments, technology in her weapons, however primitive they might seem compared to his own. They were passing through a particularly dense section of forest the next day when disaster struck. The undergrowth here was dominated by tall, reed-like plants topped with glowing, barbed spheres. The warrior was navigating carefully between them, indicating with gestures that Kalen should follow exactly in her footsteps. A distant roar startled them both. The warrior whirled toward the sound, momentarily losing focus on her path. Her shoulder brushed against one of the barbed spheres, which immediately released a cloud of glowing spores and launched several of its thorns like projectiles. One large thorn, nearly the length of Kalen's hand, embedded itself deeply in the warrior's side, just below her ribs. She snarled in pain and staggered, nearly falling into more of the dangerous plants. Kalen lunged forward and caught her, pulling her clear of the thorny grove. The warrior pushed away from him immediately, growling through clenched teeth. The thorn pulsed with an eerie blue glow, the area around it already swelling and discoloring. She reached for it, trying to pull it out, but its position made it impossible for her to grip properly. Kalen could see her strength failing as whatever toxin the thorn contained began to take effect. Her movements became sluggish, her eyes slightly unfocused. "Let me help," he said, moving toward her cautiously. She bared her fangs at him, backing away until she hit a tree trunk. Her breathing was becoming labored, and a sheen of sweat matted her fur. Still, she kept her spear pointed unsteadily at his chest. Kalen held up his hands. "The poison will spread if we don't remove it," he said, knowing she couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone conveyed his concern. He pantomimed pulling something from his own side, then made a gesture offering assistance. The warrior glanced down at the glowing Thorn, then back at Kaelin. A conflict played out in her eyes, pride warring with survival instinct. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, she lowered her spear slightly. Her gaze locked with his, fierce despite her weakening state. A growl rumbled from her chest, but this time it formed words, broken, accented, but unmistakably in his language. If you keep looking, I'll pounce. Her voice was rough, as if rarely used. Now hurry and get Thorn out. Kaelin was too shocked by her sudden speech to respond immediately. She growled again, more urgently. Now, poison spreads. Snapping out of his surprise, Kaelin approached carefully. I need to examine it first, he said, kneeling beside her. The thorn was deeply embedded, its barbed design meant to prevent easy removal. The area around it had turned a mottled purple, veins of blue toxin visible beneath her fur. Kaelin reached for his medical kit and extracted a pair of forceps and a small scalpel. This will hurt, he warned, looking into her eyes. But I need to cut around the barbs to remove it cleanly. She seemed to understand, giving a curt nod and bracing herself against the tree. Working quickly but carefully, Kaelin used the scalpel to widen the entry wound slightly, then gripped the thorn with the forceps. With one smooth motion, he pulled it straight out along its entry path. The warrior hissed in pain, but remained still. The removed thorn continued to pulse with blue light, the barbs along its length now clearly visible. Kaelin applied antiseptic from his kit to the wound, causing the warrior to flinch and growl. He then covered it with a pressure bandage to stop the bleeding. The bandage will help prevent infection, he explained, securing it in place. The poison. I don't know about the poison. Do you have remedies for these thorns? The warrior touched the bandage gingerly, then looked at Kaelin with an expression he couldn't quite read. Surprise, confusion, perhaps a hint of grudging respect. Lyra, she said suddenly, placing a clawed hand on her chest. Lyra, Kaelin repeated, understanding this was her name. He placed his hand on his own chest. Kaelin, Kaelin, she echoed, the name awkward on her tongue. She gestured to the thorn Kaelin had removed, now lying on the ground. Sleepmaker. Poison. Not kill. Make sleep, make weak. She made a gesture like falling. Predators come, eat sleeping prey. Kaelin nodded in understanding. How long does the poison last? Lyra held up 3 clawed fingers. 3 sun cycles. Less now. She nodded at the wound. You took out fast. Good. She tried to stand but swayed unsteadily. The toxin was clearly affecting her despite the thorn's removal. Kaelin reached out to support her, expecting to be rebuffed, but Lyra accepted his help with only a small growl of frustration at her own weakness. Need safe place, she said, until poison fades. Back to the fallen tree shelter, Kaelin suggested. Lyra shook her head. Too far. Too open. She pointed in a different direction. Cave nearby. Safe. With Lyra leaning reluctantly against him, they made their way slowly through the forest. Despite her weakened state, her senses remained sharp. Several times she alerted him to dangers he would have walked right into, carnivorous plants, hidden sinkholes, and once, the telltale signs of what she called ground hunters, burrowing predators that could sense vibrations from far away. The cave was well hidden behind a curtain of glowing vines. Inside, it was dry and surprisingly warm, with natural ledges that formed perfect sitting and sleeping areas. Lyra collapsed onto one of these ledges, her breathing labored. You spoke my language, Kaelin said as he checked her bandage. I was surprised. Lyra's eyes were heavy-lidded, fighting the sedative effect of the toxin. Learn from sky people. They come sometimes. Take things. Hunt us. Sky people? Other humans, you mean? Kaelin asked, alarmed. They hunt your people? Lyra nodded slowly. Some hunt for sport. Some take us for collection. Her lip curled in disgust. Some just take plants, rocks, leave us alone. Her amber eyes fixed on him accusingly. You sky person. Why here? My ship crashed, Kaelin explained again. I didn't come to hunt or take anything. I just want to repair my ship and leave, or signal for rescue. Lyra studied him for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. I believe, she said simply. The admission seemed to cost her something. Now rest. Poison makes me sleep soon. I'll keep watch, Kalen promised. Lyra nodded, her eyes already closing. If you try hurt Lyra while sleeping, she murmured, others of my kind will track you. Hunt you. No escape on Xylos. With that warning delivered, she surrendered to the toxin's effects, her breathing deepening into sleep. Kalen settled at the cave entrance, his pulse pistol across his lap, and prepared for a long night. Outside, the forest of Xylos came alive with nocturnal activity, strange cries, and sudden movements visible in the undergrowth. The jellyfish-like floaters gathered in greater numbers, their blue light casting eerie shadows. He found his gaze returning to Lyra as she slept. Human and yet not human, predator and protector, hostile and, just occasionally, vulnerable. Kalen had traveled to dozens of worlds, but never encountered a species like hers. Intelligence equal to humanity's, but evolved along an entirely different path. He wondered what her life was like here, what kind of society her people had built in this deadly paradise. And he wondered why she had chosen to help him, or at least not kill him, when she clearly considered sky people a threat. As dawn broke, filtering green-tinged light through the vines covering the cave entrance, Kalen realized he'd dozed off. He jerked awake, hand tightening on his weapon, only to find Lyra sitting cross-legged across from him, watching him with those unblinking amber eyes. She looked better. Her fur had regained its luster, and the discoloration around her wound had receded to a small circle. She held some kind of root in her hand, chewing it methodically. You sleep like prey, she commented. Lucky this is my territory. Other hunters would have taken you. Kalen straightened, embarrassed. How long have you been awake? Since first light. She offered him a piece of the root she was chewing. Helps fight poison. Eat. Kalen hesitated, then accepted it. The taste was bitter and astringent, making his tongue tingle unpleasantly, but he managed to chew and swallow it. Thank you, he said, both for the remedy and for not killing him in his sleep. Lyra acknowledged this with a slight incline of her head. Why your ship fell from sky, she asked, her command of his language noticeably better after rest. Attack. Some kind of energy storm, Kalen explained. It disabled my systems. I couldn't control the landing. What you carry? Weapons? Hunters always bring weapons. No weapons, Kalen assured her. Medical supplies. Minerals for medicine. My people need them to fight a disease. Lyra considered this. Show me, she said finally. Kalen hesitated. It's back at my ship. Then we go to ship, Lyra said, standing fluidly. She moved with more confidence now, though still with a slight stiffness on her injured side. I decide if you speak truth. They set out after sharing a breakfast of fruits Lyra had gathered before Kalen woke. The journey back to the Asteria took most of the day, with Lyra setting a more cautious pace than before. She was still recovering, though she tried to hide any signs of weakness. As they traveled, Lyra began to explain more about Xylos and its dangers. Each explanation was brief, pragmatic, focused on survival. These, she said, pointing to brilliant red flowers that snapped shut as they passed, eat small creatures. Bigger ones like you, they just hold. Inject dissolving liquid. Come back after many days, drink soup. She made a slurping gesture that would have been comical in any other context. That sound, she noted when a distant bellowing echoed through the forest, is Forest Titan. Very big, very dangerous. Eats everything. If you hear getting closer, climb highest tree. Kalen absorbed it all, developing a growing respect for anyone who could survive in this beautiful death trap of a world. Your people, he ventured. Are there many of you? Lyra's expression darkened. Once many, now few. Sky people hunted many. Disease they brought killed more. She shot him a pointed look. Your kind brings sickness even when not bringing weapons. Kalen felt a stab of guilt, though he personally had nothing to do with the exploitation Lyra described. It was an old story repeated across too many worlds. First contact leading to devastation for indigenous populations. I'm sorry, he said simply. Lyra snorted. You're sorry, changes nothing. But after a moment, she added, "But you different. You help with Thorn. Most sky people would leave Lyra to die." They reached the crash site by mid-afternoon. The Asteria lay half-buried in soil and vegetation, already being reclaimed by the voracious plant life of Xylos. Vines had begun to creep across the hull, probing for entry points. Lyra approached the ship warily, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. "Smells of burning and strange metals," she said. "Others have been here. Recently." Kalen tensed. "Others? More of your people?" Lyra shook her head grimly. "Sky hunters. Their scent is—" She searched for the word, "artificial. Like death mixed with flowers." She pointed to boot prints in the soft earth that Kalen had missed. "They took things," she continued, examining the forced entry to the cargo hold. "Broke things." Kalen rushed inside the ship, navigating the tilted corridors to the cargo hold. As Lyra had predicted, the secure container had been broken open, its contents partially looted. Some of the mineral crystals remained. The raiders had either been interrupted or couldn't carry everything. "They'll come back," Lyra said from behind him, making him jump. She moved so silently, even in the confines of the ship. "Always come back for more. Were they the ones who hunt your people?" Kalen asked. Lyra nodded, running a clawed finger along a company logo stamped on a discarded equipment case. "This mark, same as hunters who took my sister. Same as ones who poison rivers to find shiny stones." "Nexos Corporation," Kalen read, recognizing the stylized galaxy symbol. "They're a mining and biotech conglomerate. Officially, they're not supposed to operate on protected planets like Xylos." "Your sky rules mean nothing here," Lyra said bitterly. "No one watches. No one stops them." Kalen felt a cold anger building. He'd transported cargo for Nexos subsidiaries before, never questioning what was in the containers or how it was obtained. How many other worlds had they exploited under the radar of galactic regulations? "They're dangerous," he warned Lyra. "If they've established a base here, they'll have advanced weapons, security systems." "I know their dangers," Lyra cut him off. "My people have fought them for many seasons. They have sky weapons that burn and explode. But we know Xylos. They don't." A fierce light entered her eyes. "And now they have taken something from you, too. We have common enemy." Kalen stared at her, understanding dawning. "You want to track them? Attack them." "They took your healing stones," Lyra said. "You want back, yes? They took my sister, others of my kind. I want them back." She stepped closer, her amber eyes intense. "You have sky knowledge. I have Xylos knowledge. Together, maybe we win." It was insane, taking on a corporate military operation with just the two of them. Suicide. The rational part of Kalen's brain screamed at him to focus on repairs, on survival, on eventual rescue. "And yet, if they have a communication array at their base," he said slowly, "I could potentially use it to send a distress signal. Maybe even alert the Galactic Rangers about their illegal operation here." Lyra didn't seem to follow all of this, but she understood the important part. "You help fight." Kalen nodded, decision made. "I help fight." A rare smile crossed Lyra's features, revealing those impressive canines. "Good. We leave soon. They not expect us to follow." They spent the remainder of the day gathering what they needed from the ship. Kalen salvaged power cells, tools, and the remaining medical supplies. He found a working scanner that could detect Nexo's equipment emissions, which would help them track the raiders to their base. Lyra watched him work with obvious curiosity, asking questions about various technologies. Her quick understanding impressed him. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, her intelligence was evident. As night fell, they made camp a safe distance from the ship, expecting the raiders might return. Lyra built a small, nearly smokeless fire using specific woods and resins she gathered. The flames burned with an unusual purple hue, giving off heat but minimal light. "Tell your world," Lyra said as they ate a meal of roasted tubers and a small animal she had caught and prepared. "Why you travel, stars?" Kalen told her about Earth and the human colonies, about the Transport Guild and his life as a pilot. He explained about the pandemic ravaging the central systems and how the minerals from Cygnus 4, now partially stolen by Nexos, were crucial for vaccine production. Lyra listened intently, asking surprisingly insightful questions. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Your kind spreads like forest fire," she finally said, "taking more and more worlds. Do any remain untouched?" The question held no accusation, just genuine curiosity, but it made Kaelin uncomfortable nonetheless. There are protected planets, like Xylos is supposed to be, worlds where indigenous intelligent life has priority rights. He sighed, but as you've seen, the regulations aren't always enforced out here in the frontier. And if my people at Sky ships could travel stars, would your kind welcome us or fear us? It was a profound question with no easy answer. Kaelin opted for honesty. Some would welcome you. Others would fear you. Humans tend to fear what's different. Lyra nodded, as if this confirmed something she already believed. Same with my people. Fear of different is older than stars. She poked at the fire with a stick. My turn to tell story? I'd like that, Kaelin said. Lyra spoke of her people, whom she called the Sylvari. They lived in small clan groups throughout Xylos, adapted to different regions of the planet. Her clan, the Emerald Shadow, were forest dwellers, expert hunters and botanists who knew every plant, animal, and terrain feature in their vast territory. Their society was matriarchal, with females serving as both hunters and leaders while males typically specialized in healing, child-rearing, and crafting. They had a rich oral tradition but no written language, passing knowledge through songs and stories. We live long times by your counting, she explained. 200, sometimes 300 cycles of seasons. Learn much in that time. And the Sky people? Kaelin prompted. When did they first come? Lyra's expression hardened. First Sky people came when I was just cub. They brought sickness. Many died. They took samples, left. Called scientists. The way she pronounced the word made it sound like a curse. Then came others. Hunters seeking trophies. Their kind, she pointed at the Nexos logo on a piece of equipment Kaelin had salvaged, came last. Worst of all, take land, take resources, take people. For what purpose? Kaelin asked. Why take your people? Some for fighting rings on other worlds. Entertainment. Lyra spat the word. Some for study. Some as exotic pets. Her claws extended unconsciously. My sister, Nara, taken 2 seasons ago. Tracking party found dead hunters, but no sign of captives. Clan leader says forget, move territories. I cannot forget. The pain in her voice was unmistakable, and Kaelin felt a surge of determination. Whatever. Differences existed between their species. Some emotions were universal: grief, rage, the love for family. We'll find their base, he promised. And if your sister is there, we'll get her out. Lyra studied him with those penetrating amber eyes. Why you help? Not your fight. They stole from me too, Kaelin said. And they're breaking laws that exist to protect worlds like yours. But mostly, he hesitated, then finished honestly, because it's right. Lyra continued to stare at him, then slowly extended her hand, palm up, a surprisingly human gesture. Then we are huntmates until fight ends. Kaelin placed his hand in hers, feeling the soft fur and hard calluses. Huntmates, he agreed. They set out at first light, following the raiders' trail with Lyra's tracking skills and Kaelin's scanner. The Nexos team had made no effort to hide their passage, cutting a swath through the undergrowth with laser tools and leaving behind wrappers, power cell casings, and even a discarded water container. Arrogant, Lyra commented. Think no one here can threaten them. They traveled for 3 days, moving carefully through increasingly dangerous terrain. The deeper they ventured into Xylos, the more hostile the environment became. Massive carnivorous plants blocked entire valleys. Swarms of stinging insects forced detours. Once they spent an entire day hiding in a cave as a forest titan lumbered past, a behemoth herbivore the size of a small building, with an armor-plated hide and multiple horns that could uproot trees. On the 4th day, Kaelin's scanner picked up a significant energy signature. We're getting close, he told Lyra. Big power source ahead, about 5 kilometers. Lyra nodded, her posture tense with anticipation. She'd grown quieter as they neared their target, more focused. The playful side she'd occasionally revealed during their journey had vanished, replaced by the calculating hunter. They crested a ridge as sunset painted the sky in violent oranges and reds. Below them, nestled in a valley, stood the Nexo's base, a collection of prefabricated structures surrounded by a reinforced perimeter fence. Landing pads housed 2 small shuttlecraft. Armed guards patrolled the compound, and automated defense turrets scanned for threats. Lyra growled softly at the sight. Many guards, many weapons. Kalen studied the base through a small set of binoculars he'd salvaged from the Asteria. Typical frontier operation. Minimal staff, maximum automation. I count 8 guards on patrol, probably another 8 off duty. Those turrets are the real problem. They'll detect us long before we reach the fence. What inside buildings? Lyra asked, her tail twitching with barely suppressed emotion. Kalen adjusted the binoculars, focusing on each structure. That largest central building is probably administration and living quarters. The long one to the left looks like storage. That circular one with the heavy security is likely the lab. He paused, noting a smaller structure set apart from the others. That isolated building with the separate fence, that could be where they keep captives. Lyra followed his gaze, her pupils dilating at the sight. Cages, she hissed. I smell fear from here. Kalen couldn't detect anything at this distance, but he didn't doubt her superior senses. We need a plan, he said. We can't just charge in. They retreated to a safe distance and made camp in a defensible cave high on the ridge. As night fell, they discussed strategy, drawing diagrams in the dirt floor. The turrets, Kalen explained, pointing to the marks representing the automated defense systems. They operate on thermal and motion detection. They're designed to target anything human-sized or larger that approaches the perimeter. Can destroy them? Lyra asked, her tail swishing thoughtfully behind her. Not easily. They're armored and self-repairing. Kalen frowned, thinking, but we might be able to distract them. Create multiple targets that draw their fire away from us. Lyra's ears perked up. Forest Titans. If we lure one close to base, guards focus on bigger threat. Kalen stared at her. You want to use a Forest Titan as a diversion? Those things are walking natural disasters. Precisely, Lyra said with a predatory smile. Nexos fear them. I've seen guards run when Titans approach, and I know how to attract one. The plan they developed was audacious and desperate. Using a combination of Lyra's knowledge of Xylos and Kalen's technical expertise, they would create a perfect storm of chaos that might just give them a chance to infiltrate the facility. They spent the next day gathering what they needed. Specific plants that Forest Titans were attracted to, materials for improvised explosives using power cells from the Asteria, and toxins from certain Xylosian fauna that Lyra expertly harvested. These, Lyra explained, carefully extracting venom from a captured multi-legged creature that resembled a giant centipede, will paralyze but not kill. Good for guards. As dusk approached on the day of their planned attack, Kalen felt a mix of determination and dread. What they were attempting was incredibly dangerous, with a slim chance of success. If they failed, they would likely both die. Kalen shot by Nexo security, Lyra captured for whatever grim fate awaited her kind in human hands. Lyra seemed to sense his apprehension. She crouched beside him as he made final adjustments to their crude explosive devices. Fear is good, she said softly. Keeps you sharp, but don't let control you. I've never done anything like this before, Kalen admitted. I'm a pilot, not a commando. Lyra placed a clawed hand on his shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle. Tonight, you are Sylvari warrior, she said with conviction. We fight for our people, yours and mine. Her amber eyes held his for a long moment, and Kalen felt something shift between them. A deeper connection, a shared purpose that transcended their differences. For our people, he agreed quietly. Night fell, and they moved into position. Lyra had strategically placed the Titan-attracting plants in a path leading toward the north side of the compound. When the wind shifted, as it did reliably each night, according to Lyra, It would carry the scent directly to the territories where forest titans were known to roam. Meanwhile, Kalen had set his improvised explosives at key points around the perimeter, not close enough to trigger the defense systems, but positioned to cause maximum confusion when detonated. "Remember," he whispered to Lyra as they crouched in the underbrush, waiting for the right moment. "Once we're inside, our priorities are the captives and the communication array. If I can send a distress signal to the Galactic Rangers, they'll shut this operation down permanently." Lyra nodded, her fur bristling with anticipation. "My priority is captives. Your priority is communication. Meet at shuttle landing when done." Kalen checked his makeshift poison darts, hollow reed tubes loaded with the paralytic venom Lyra had harvested. His pulse pistol was set to stun, though its charge was limited. Once it was depleted, they would have only primitive weapons and their wits. The first sign that their plan was working came as a distant roar, felt as much as heard. The forest around them went silent as nocturnal creatures sensed the approach of an apex predator. "Titan comes," Lyra whispered, ears swiveling toward the sound. Soon, within minutes, alarms began blaring at the Nexo's compound. Floodlights swept the perimeter as guards rushed to defensive positions. Through his binoculars, Kalen could see the panic as sensor readings warned of the approaching behemoth. "Now," he said, activating the detonator. The explosives went off in sequence, creating a wave of concussive blasts that disabled several perimeter sensors and confused the automated defense systems. At the same moment, the forest titan burst from the tree line on the north side, a mountain of armored flesh and bone, trumpeting its rage at the lights and noise. Turrets swiveled to target the massive creature, unleashing streams of energy bolts that merely scorched its armored hide and enraged it further. The Titan charged, smashing through the perimeter fence as if it were made of paper. "Move!" Kalen hissed, and they sprinted toward the southeast corner of the compound, where the chaos had created a blind spot in the defenses. They reached the fence unchallenged, Kalen using a salvaged laser cutter to create an opening just large enough for them to slip through. Inside, alarms continued to wail as security forces concentrated on the rampaging Titan. Buildings shook with each thunderous step of the creature. "You go," Lyra said, pointing toward the central building where the communication equipment would likely be housed. "I free captives." Kalen hesitated, knowing they stood a better chance together, but understanding her urgency. "Be careful," he said. Lyra touched his cheek briefly with her clawed fingers. "You also," she replied, then melted into the shadows, heading toward the isolated containment building. Kalen moved carefully toward the central facility, using storage containers and vehicles as cover. Twice he had to hide as panicked technicians ran past, heading for the shuttle landing pads. No one expected intruders while dealing with a forest titan. He reached the main building and found an unguarded side entrance, the security lock disabled by the power fluctuations caused by his explosives. Inside, corridors lit by emergency lighting stretched in several directions. Following the logical layout of such facilities, Kalen headed for what should be the communications center. He encountered a single technician who barely had time to look surprised before Kalen's stun blast dropped him. The communications room was exactly where he'd expected, and mercifully empty. Operators had abandoned their posts to deal with the emergency. Kalen slipped into a seat at the main console and began working quickly. The system was standard Nexo's corporate tech, not military grade, but still secured against unauthorized access. Kalen called on his years of technical training, bypassing security protocols and gaining entry to the communication system. He began composing an emergency broadcast, including the coordinates of the facility, details of the illegal mining and biotech operations, and evidence of sentient species exploitation. As the message assembled, he also downloaded whatever data he could access about Nexo's activities on Xylos, information that would be damning in a Galactic Council inquiry. Just as he was about to transmit, the door hissed open. Kalen whirled, pulse pistol raised, to find himself facing a middle-aged human in a Nexo's executive uniform, holding a much more powerful weapon aimed at Kalen's chest. I wondered if our little raid on that crashed transport might attract unwanted attention, the man said coolly. Though I admit, I expected a rescue team, not a solo infiltrator working with the local wildlife. This operation is illegal, Kalen replied, trying to keep the man talking while looking for any advantage. Xylos is a protected planet. The Sylvari are a sentient species with full rights under galactic law. The executive laughed. Galactic law? Out here? Please. He gestured with his weapon. Step away from the console. Now. Kalen complied, mind racing. The message was ready to send. He just needed to hit the transmission key. But the executive was too far away to rush, and the weapon he held would disintegrate Kalen before he made it halfway. You're experimenting on sentient beings, Kalen said, trying a different approach. Selling them as fighting animals or pets. That's not just illegal. It's morally reprehensible. It's profitable, the executive corrected. Their regenerative abilities alone are worth billions in the biotech market. And their strength-to-weight ratio is extraordinary. Military applications are significant. A shadow moved behind the executive. A hint of green, there and gone so quickly Kalen almost thought he'd imagined it. He kept his expression neutral, not wanting to give anything away. And the environmental damage you're causing? The mining operations? Kalen pressed, taking a small step sideways to ensure the executive's back remained to the door. Necessary collateral. The rare minerals here are valuable enough to justify the investment. The executive's face hardened. Enough talk. On your knees, hands behind your head. When this Titan situation is contained, we'll discuss what to do with you. Perhaps you'd like to volunteer for our research program? The shadow materialized into Lyra, moving with deadly silence. Before the executive could react, her arm shot around his neck, pressing a venom-coated claw to his throat. Perhaps you join program instead, she growled in his ear. The executive froze, his weapon still trained on Kalen. Call off your pet, he hissed. Or I'll kill your friend. Lyra's claws pressed deeper, drawing a bead of blood. I'm no pet, she snarled. And if he dies, you die slower. Kalen took advantage of the standoff to lunge for the console, slamming his hand down on the transmission key. The system beeped confirmation as the message went out on the emergency frequency, directed to the nearest Galactic Ranger outpost. Too late, he told the executive. The Rangers have everything they need now. This operation is over. Rage contorted the executive's features. He swung his weapon toward the console, intent on destroying it, but Lyra was faster. Her venom-laced claws raked across his neck, not deep enough to kill, but enough to deliver the paralytic toxin. The executive crumpled, his weapon clattering to the floor. Did you find the captives? Kalen asked urgently. Lyra nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. Many of my kind. Some others, different species. All freed. Moving to forest now. She paused, then added softly, Nara among them. My sister lives. Relief and joy flooded Kalen. The message is sent. Help will come, but not immediately. We need to get clear of this place. Guards running, Lyra confirmed. Titan destroyed much. Shuttles preparing to leave. They made their way outside to find the compound in chaos. The forest Titan had demolished nearly half the structures before lumbering back into the wilderness, leaving destruction in its wake. Fires burned in several buildings, and the few remaining guards were focused on evacuation rather than security. They reunited with the freed captives at the edge of the forest. 15 Sylvari in various states of health, and 3 other alien species Kalen didn't recognize. Nara was among them, thinner and bearing new scars, but alive and fierce-eyed like her sister. The brief reunion between Lyra and Nara was intense, a moment of pressing foreheads together, hands grasping arms, whispered words in their native tongue that needed no translation. Love, relief, grief, joy, emotions that crossed all species barriers. We must move quickly, Lyra announced to the group. Into deep forest before more sky people come. They fled into the protective darkness of the Xylosian forest, leaving the burning compound behind. Kalen helped support a weakened Sylvari elder, while Lyra and Nara took point, guiding the group toward a safe haven known only to their people. By dawn, they had reached a hidden valley where an ancient silvery settlement stood, structures built into the living trees, nearly invisible from the ground. Other Silvari emerged from the canopy dwellings, cries of joy and disbelief echoing through the forest as families were reunited. Kalen hung back, suddenly aware of his alienness in this world. He had helped, yes, but he was still one of the sky people who had brought so much suffering to Xylos. An older female Silvari approached him, larger than Lyra, with silver-streaked emerald fur and elaborate scarification that marked her as a leader. She studied him silently, then spoke in heavily accented but clear language. "You helped free our people," she said. "Why?" "It was the right thing to do," Kalen answered simply. "What Nexos was doing violated everything my people supposedly stand for." The elder considered this. "Not all sky people same," she observed. "Like not all Silvari same." She gestured to the reunited families. "For this, you have our gratitude. You may stay until your people come." "Thank you," Kalen said, deeply moved by the acceptance. Over the next days, as they waited for the Galactic Rangers to respond to his message, Kalen was gradually integrated into the Silvari community. He learned more of their language, their customs, their deep connection to Xylos itself. They were not merely inhabitants of the planet. They were part of its ecosystem in a symbiotic relationship that humans rarely achieved with their worlds. Lyra remained his primary guide and companion. With the immediate danger past and her sister safe, she revealed more of herself to him. Intelligent, curious, occasionally mischievous, with a wry sense of humor that caught him by surprise. They spoke of many things in those quiet days, of stars and planets, of different ways of knowing, of what might have been if their peoples had met differently. Sometimes they didn't speak at all, content to share space and silence in the massive trees where the Silvari made their homes. On the seventh day, Kalen's salvage communication device picked up a response to his distress call. The Galactic Rangers had received his message and dispatched a cruiser to investigate. They would arrive within 48 hours. That night, a celebration was held in the treetop village, a feast of gratitude for the rescue and a ceremony to honor those who had not returned. Lyra translated the songs and stories for Kalen, her voice soft in his ear as drum rhythms pulsed through the night. Later, they sat together on a high platform overlooking the moonlit forest. Bioluminescent organisms drifted through the air like earthly fireflies, creating a magical atmosphere of floating lights. "Your people come tomorrow," Lyra said, breaking a comfortable silence. "You return to stars." Kalen nodded, feeling a surprising reluctance. "The Rangers will shut down the Nexos operation. Your people should be safer now. Until next corporation comes," Lyra replied without bitterness, merely stating a reality she understood all too well. "Always more coming." "I could stay," Kalen said suddenly, surprising himself with the suggestion. "Help your people deal with human contact. Be an advocate within the system." Lyra turned to him, her amber eyes reflecting the bioluminescent lights. "You would give up sky? Stars? Your own kind? I've seen more wonders in these few days on Xylos than in years of space travel," Kalen admitted, "and more honor among the Silvari than in many human societies." Lyra's expression softened. She reached out to touch his face gently, claws retracted. "Brave thought, but not possible. You're not made for Xylos. Would die here, eventually. Some plant, some creature would take you." The truth of her words stung, but Kalen knew she was right. Without constant vigilance and Silvari protection, a human would not survive long in this beautiful death trap of a world. "Then come with me," he suggested, capturing her hand in his. "You could be a representative of your people to the Galactic Council. Make them understand what's happening here." Lyra's ears flicked back in surprise. "Leave Xylos." The concept seemed to both fascinate and frighten her. "See stars up close." "Yes." "Be the first Silvari ambassador." Kalen squeezed her hand gently. "Help prevent more Nexos situations. Protect your world from outside." Lyra gazed up at the star-filled sky, visibly conflicted. Would they listen to Forest Hunter? I know nothing of sky politics. You know what matters, Kalen insisted. You know truth. Sometimes that's enough to change things. They talked long into the night, weighing possibilities and consequences. By dawn, no firm decision had been reached, but the idea had taken root. The Galactic Ranger cruiser arrived with military precision the next day, landing in a cleared area near the crash site of the Asteria. Kalen met them there, having said temporary goodbyes to the Sylvari with a promise to return regardless of the outcome. Captain Alara of the Rangers was a no-nonsense veteran with a strong sense of justice. She listened to Kalen's account of the Nexo's operations with growing anger, reviewing the evidence he had downloaded from their systems. This is exactly the kind of corporate exploitation the Protected Worlds Act was designed to prevent, she said grimly. We'll need your formal testimony, of course, and ideally, evidence from the affected species themselves. The Sylvari are cautious about direct contact, Kalen explained. They've had mostly negative experiences with humans. Understandable, Captain Alara nodded. But without their testimony, it becomes your word against Nexos. They have powerful friends in the council. Kalen hesitated, then made a decision. Wait here, he requested. I may have a solution. He returned to the Sylvari settlement and sought out Lyra. She was with the elders, already in discussion about the arrival of the Rangers. When Kalen explained the situation, a tense debate broke out among the Sylvari leadership. Eventually, the silver-furred elder raised her hand for silence. If words to Sky Council will protect Xylos, words must be spoken, she declared. She looked at Lyra. You have walked with Sky Person. You understand their ways better than most. Will you speak for Sylvari? Lyra's eyes met Kalen's across the circle. I will, she said firmly. For our people. For Xylos. She approached Kalen afterward, radiating a mixture of determination and apprehension. I go to Stars, she said simply. But first I speak to Sky Guards. Show what Nexos did. Together, they returned to the Ranger cruiser. Captain Alara was visibly startled by Lyra's appearance, but recovered quickly, treating her with the respect due to a representative of a sentient species. Lyra provided testimony with eloquence and clarity that surprised even Kalen. She spoke of the years of exploitation, the abductions, the environmental damage. She showed the Rangers her sister's scars and explained the experiments conducted on her people. And she formally requested protection for Xylos under the fullest extent of galactic law. This evidence is more than sufficient, Captain Alara assured them when Lyra had finished. Nexos will face severe sanctions. We'll establish a monitoring station in orbit to prevent further incursions. And the Sylvari? Kalen pressed. Will they be granted full recognition as a sentient species with all associated rights? I'll recommend it personally, the captain promised. With this testimony, I believe the council will approve protected status quickly. As preparations were made for departure, Kalen sought a private moment with Lyra. They stood beneath the immense trees of Xylos, perhaps for the last time together. Are you certain about this? He asked. Coming to the central planets will be overwhelming. Lyra squared her shoulders, looking more regal than fierce now. I am Hunter, diplomat now, too. I adapt. Her amber eyes softened as she looked at him. Besides, I've good guide, yes? Kalen smiled, something warm unfurling in his chest. The best, he agreed. The Ranger cruiser lifted off from Xylos the next day, carrying with it an unusual pair of passengers, a human pilot who had found something worth fighting for beyond his own people, and a Sylvari warrior venturing into the stars to protect her world. As the dense forests of Xylos receded beneath them, giving way to swirling clouds and finally the starry blackness of space, Lyra pressed a clawed hand against the viewport. Her eyes reflected the stars with a new understanding of their vastness and the possibilities they held. Beautiful, she breathed. Kalen placed his hand beside hers on the cool transparency. Yes, he agreed, but he wasn't looking at the stars. A new beginning. Lyra turned to him, her expression both vulnerable and determined. When Thorn was in my side, you helped without hesitation. When your ship crashed, I helped eventually. Her lips curved in a small smile. Both saved by the other. Balance, yes? Perfect balance, Kalen agreed. The cruiser accelerated toward the jump point that would take them back to the central planets. Behind them, Xylos grew smaller, a blue-green gem in the darkness, beautiful and deadly, and now, perhaps, a little safer because of an unlikely partnership. Born of necessity and grown into something neither of them had words to fully describe. Lyra's fingers intertwined with Kalen's, claws carefully retracted. "If you keep looking at me like that," she murmured, echoing her word from days ago, but with a very different meaning now, "I might pounce." Kalen smiled. "I'm counting on it," he replied, as together they faced the stars and whatever future awaited them among them.